Next speaker, please.
Good morning. I'm Michael Snyder. I live at 201 Orchard Place. These mics are always set too short. I'm not from here. What that means is I don't see things the way that locals see them. So the kind of bumbling incompetence and mismanagement I've seen in some of the programs here, the things that locals tend to shrug off, I see in a little bit different light. We've come in part this impasse in part because the majority of this board has squandered millions of taxpayer dollars trying to shutter a top tier local business or industry. In the process, they've destroyed the tax revenue it could provide. This simple majority has worked hard to systematically wipe out our family farms one by one. And as it did so, they crushed the American dream and broke hearts one family at a time. Now this simple majority is seeking to shut down a place where dreams are born. Now I'll tell you, I wrote this before I knew we weren't final yet. A place where anyone can sit in peace, open a book, and explore worlds limited only by their imagination. Some find this threatening, so they ban books one at a time. Bikers, I say, why ban a few titles when you can shut down the entire system? That's real Teutonic efficiency. Animal abuse is a well-documented red flag indicating the potential for further abuses down the line. More than a few philosophers have stated that our value, the things that we hold most precious in life, are defined by how we treat the least among us and the most vulnerable among us. I would say the animals in the shelter would qualify as that. A simple majority of the board or the budget before me deems shuttering the shelter a fiscal necessity. I see it as something darker. Fortunately, for the sake of this community's soul, there are good people here willing to sacrifice what little they have to spare to prevent this from happening. And I applaud them. I'll leave you with this. For those who think their anti-cannabis crusade is somehow based on a higher moral ground and perpetual sobriety, how we get things done in America, I have a story from the Bible, the Gospel of John, chapter 2. That's where Jesus brought a buzz to the party, unless you have another name for changing water into wine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Terry Mines, Junction City. I feel it really appalling that you come out and say that you have the same feelings as the rest of us here. That's really appalling to me. You've had an entire year, at least, to understand what's coming forward. You've spent years destroying all the businesses in this community, destroying their opportunities, destroying any idea of an opportunity. And I'm not talking cannabis, I'm talking any restaurant in town. I mean, you guys killed cannabis. You did that already. I'll probably be the only one that makes it. And that's pathetic. It's like you put the fear of this over an elderly group of people. You do realize 2/3 of this county is 65 or older, retired, has no ability to increase their wages, is in a fixed income suffering with inflation out of control. So then people come out and say, let's tax people here. It's not even a possibility. I mean, seriously, it's like you're not coming up with good ideas. You're not coming up with solutions. You're spending all your time making opt-out zones. You people seriously need to give up your resignations. You have not addressed the importance and the needs of this community. You've only done Jim Underwood's puppet behavior and just worked on a few people's desires. Animals. This is the compassion, the humanity of our community. It's the fabric of our society. That and education. And you're going after both of them. It's absolutely appalling that you would put this fear in any of these people. I'm disgusted by it. I think your resignations are due.
Next. Someone's coming. Oh, okay. Go ahead. You're already close.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Hollenbach, and I brought along my little friend. This is Squeaker. He's a storytime mouse, and for 40 years, he delighted children and helped them learn to love books. And he asked me to come out today. He doesn't really talk to anybody else but me. And he said, "Oh, the county's running out of money. But did we kill the goose that laid the golden eggs? Was everything in our power done to facilitate the licensing of the most powerful tax base in our county? Not to mention all kinds of retail outlets? Yes, I know. Not everybody loves cannabis. Now we're suddenly low on funds. But will we close down the heart and soul of our community? I hope not. So, literacy is the foundation of learning. Reading to a child is the most important way to get them ready for school and for life. In hard times, a library and an animal shelter are the best places to put what little money there is. You can judge a community how they treat the smallest among us. Sometimes it's little kids, sometimes it's old people, and sometimes it's a puppy. But those who don't have a voice, this indicates our level of compassion. Let's make Trinity County famous for caring about the important things in life, not an example of how to grind down values in lieu of a bigger insurance plan or top-heavy management. Just coming from a librarian who served the public for 40 years, and yes, I had a budget too. So I wish you well in your endeavors, and I'll help in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have her extra minutes? I'll try. Hi, I'm Christine. Are we ready? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Christine Edwards, and 274 dogs and 195 cats entered the shelter last year. And this year has been even more. So what's going to happen to these animals when there's no shelter? You are still going to have animals that have been placed in the shelter. Animal control will have to investigate animal cruelty cases. You still have to pick up dogs that are a nuisance in the area, in the leash law areas, and also the health and safety code states that if you have 4 dogs 4 months a year or younger, they have to be picked up. Plus, people will be dumping them over the fence, and how can you pick and choose what laws you want to enforce? What I'm getting at is that you will still have dogs and cats at the shelter, and you must give them a chance to find a home. No animal should be euthanized if it is adoptable, Civil Code Section 1834.4, or given to a rescue group. We must have a shelter open for adoptions, and volunteer programs really help. You must allow volunteers to work at the shelter so these animals have a chance to find a good home. There is a shelter program that if you volunteer for 24 hours, TASA will pay and fix your dog or cat. We must keep this program. Matter of fact, they just picked up 2 dogs and TASA paid to have them spayed, and they were pregnant with 21 puppies. Just think, without a shelter and help from TASA, these puppies would be running around starving and dying. I mentioned to the sheriff about insurance. You're already paying insurance, and you should continue to pay it so that we can save the lives of these animals that have no voice. If you don't have an adoption program, these animals will be euthanized, and their death will be on your hands, and killing them is from your decision. Don't take it to heart. So you must be open to the public so we have a chance. I have been in this group that built the shelter. Many fundraisers later, it was open in 2002. Now you want to shut it down, and all the animals in our county will suffer. This is heartbreaking. I hope you can find the funds to save the shelter. These animals did not choose to be abandoned, and stray lives matter, and it depends on us to help them. So keeping the shelter open to the public is so important, really important. And the adoption program, we cannot just take them in and euthanize them. So please look at that and work with us, with the volunteer programs too that can help, but we need to have your help too to let's open.
Thank you. Oh. Yes.
Jamie Bailey, TASA member. Good morning, board member, staff, CEO, Tuthill. I am here today to speak on behalf of the pending closure to the minimum levels of the animal shelter. I am confident that you all can speak to the animal control issues in your area that you live in, but none of you live in the Hayfork area. And it is my understanding that the Hayfork Trinity Pines area has the most significant issues. This is an ongoing problem that will not resolve itself by reducing animal control to minimum levels. I ask you to look at the budget numbers again. At the end of the day, the cut is not worth the cost of what this will do to the communities and the animals in them by closing the doors. So I ask you this. What is your plan? First, you cut services, save some money, but the animals will still be here. More strays, more abuse, more abandonment, more starvation. Who will save the innocent animals that didn't ask for this punishment? Who is going to answer these calls? And if these animals get brought to the shelter and there's no program for adoption, they will be killed. Who is going to kill all of these animals when the shelter turns from a daily save program to a daily kill program? When the employees have to start killing animals every day, are you going to go down there and help? Are you going to pay for the mental health needs for these employees? Are you going to sit with these animals as they take their last breath? Are they going to be killed for no reason other than we couldn't come up with enough money to keep the adoption program open? Can you kill these animals simply because keeping the shelter open was not an option? When your employees quit because they didn't sign up to kill animals every day, who are you going to get to replace them? Have you gone to the shelter and walked through? Do you have what it takes to look these animals in the face and say your life is not worth it because you're just a dog or just a cat? Is this really the only answer? I've worked for this county for over 23 years. I've seen it bad. I've seen the pink slips. I've seen and heard the bankruptcy talks, but we've always made it through because everyone went back to the table, made the tough decisions that were right for Trinity County. But not ever did someone say, let's kill innocent animals to make the budget work. That's what you're doing right now. I ask you, no, I implore you to go back to the table, change the mindset, and do better.
Tell you what, Mike, ma'am, could you just hold just a minute? There's a gentleman who's been trying for 3 speakers. Thank you.
Oh, so sorry.
This is going to be pretty casual. This is Jake. Big Jake, if you like John Wayne Westerns. His sister at home is Maddie Ross from True Grit. My name is Richard Rockwell. I'm a retired biologist. I live over in Junction City for about the last 18 years. Some people call me Doc. I'm the crazy guy out with a fly rod on my rock out there fishing. Okay. So Jake was a 2017 fire survivor from across the river over in Valdor Gulch. He was on his own for 2 weeks with no help. He was burned pretty severely on his paws, his muzzle, his side. He was about a year old at that time. And a more gentle male dog I've never met. And I come from a long ranching family down in the valley, and we've used herding breeds a lot. And this is one of the smarter, most gentle dogs I've ever met. And he was out there surviving, eating lizards based on what he likes now. And it was our shelter staff, Christine involved. They knew he was out there. They finally located him, were able to get him in for treatment by Dr. Nickerson, pro bono, of course. And I would like to walk him around and let you pet him just for the feel, right? But understand, he has never been in a room with people like this. He's around my parents, 80-year-old parents, myself and my sister. That's the biggest room of people he's ever been in. He's super smart. It's animals like this that would die without that kind of help. He would have been out there and would have succumbed to infection in his wounds, or a predator like a bear would have taken him out because he couldn't defend himself. And it was our shelter staff that saved an intelligent, innocent being from probably certain death. So I just want you to think about that. I know, believe me, I know budget stuff is bad, but try to save the innocent programs for like library for kids, the animal shelter for dogs. And please do what you can. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, ma'am.
Sure. My name is Melinda, and out of a $75 million budget, $8 million is spent on detention and correction. And the Trinity County Jail has a daily average population of 56 inmates. Trinity County has the second lowest per capita property crime rate out of 58 counties. And yet we have the highest per capita expenditure on police services. That's completely out of balance. The probation department, $6 million annually. How many people are on probation? You know, Trinity County spends $8 million on solid waste and has a population of 15,000. Sonoma County spends $6 million on solid waste and has a population of 350,000. This is blowing my mind. The jail offers library services. Are the inmates going to be the only people that have access to library services and not the residents? That's boggling. When you deny access to information, technology, and literacy, you guys have failed at your jobs. It looks like the BOS wants to keep Trinity County residents who are not civil servants locked up on probation and on welfare.
Thank you for your comment.
Chris Williams, Weaverville. I'm disappointed in my representatives. As a reminder, the decisions that you make up there matter. And when you find ways to stop Trinity County from being an economically thriving place, such as truly supporting our commercial cannabis industry, you only hurt the people and the animals that you serve. I stand here before you as a mother of 3 dogs, Coop, Wit, and Dolly, and I can't imagine my life here without them. They are my joy, my loyal protectors. They provide the most beautiful and pure, unconditional love that exists. And they would have been euthanized simply for existing. And that would have been an unconscionable loss. Coop would have been euthanized definitely under your plans, and I'm here to advocate for him. We're only cheating ourselves when we opt to make ourselves more comfortable when we defund an animal shelter. So get creative and get uncomfortable until you can commit to supporting, finding ways to help our community thrive. And it's about public safety and community responsibilities. Shelters reduce the number of strays on our streets, prevent the spread of diseases, promote responsible pet ownership, and funding our shelter. We show that we as a community have a soul. We value the lives of the creatures that are before us and take pride in making these beautiful, safe environments. I also want to talk about the library. These are hubs of knowledge, connection, opportunities. And as a kid, I stood in the long line of community members bringing the books from the old library to this new library. In high school, I sang a song called Sonny Chuck It, which was about recycling. And it was to honor the recycled night that is in the lobby of the library. The library provides access to education, which we surely need, technology, and resources that many in our community simply cannot afford on their own. Investing in our public library and investing in our animal shelter is an investment in the heart of our community. So get creative. The money is there. Get uncomfortable so that we can save the soul of our community. Thank you.
Morning, supervisors and staff. Adrian Keys, Mayfork. I'd actually ask that I might make a statement of my own and then also to read a letter from a community member who can't be here today. I'll try and keep it all under 3 minutes, but I would appreciate a little bit of grace on that. First, I'd like to thank the supervisors for recently supporting the cannabis industry with the opposition letter to Senate Bill 2223. The bill did die in the appropriations hearings. And so hopefully next year we'll see a different bill with the hemp regulation in it that doesn't also include the inversion thing that Newsom tried to sneak in at the very last minute. And secondly, for your support for Assembly Bill 1111, which also passed through the Assembly and the Senate and is on the governor's desk. I've sent you the information that I have available and request that you send a support letter to Newsom asking you to sign that bill. That's all for the first component. Secondly, on the shelter, I have to say I'm a little bit, I do these meetings a lot, but today is incredibly emotional. So a little choked up as somebody who is, I'll be speaking for Cindy Smith from the Hayfork Pet Rescue. My partner Angelina and I fostered her very first dog, and we fostered her very last. About 35 other dogs in between. They all found homes, except for the 2 that we kept. Now we've got 2 lovely animals. Don't know what I'd do without them. So here's what Cindy has to say. To our county supervisors, my name is Cindy Smith. I run a nonprofit spay and neuter assistance program, which covers Hayfork, High and Palm, Wildwood, Forest Glen, and Trinity Pines. I also ran Trinity Pet Rescue in Hayfork before I moved away. I'm heartbroken to hear this shelter is under the threat of being closed down. With me not there, being there to help rescue dogs is bad enough, as I was the only rescue in Trinity County. Trinity County has a horrendous problem with dump dogs and puppies as it is. What will happen if this county has no place for them to go? These animals cannot survive on their own. They are completely dependent on humans, and they will be doomed to a slow and tortured death. The ones who do survive will form feral packs, which will be dangerous to humans and wildlife, and God forbid rabies doesn't start going around. This will be an even bigger threat. Do you really want to be the people who make the decision to take away their only chance at life, to condemn them to this horrible fate? They have no voice. They are the victims here. Humans have done this, and humans are the only ones who can fight to help save them. The Trinity County Animal Shelter is their only hope in this entire county. Please find a way to help these helpless animals who can't fight for themselves. Please find a way to keep the shelter open. Please be a voice for these thrown away innocent animals who are completely at your mercy and their lives are in your hands. Thank you.
Good morning, board. I'm Elise Hazard from Trinity Center. Good morning, Chair. I'm here to speak to you this morning about the impact of library services in the North Lake area. We're a very remote community in a rural county, and the few services and businesses we have up there are absolute fabric of our culture. We have many elderly people in our community, some who can't drive and have very little contact with the outside world. So the library services are a hub for people to have contact with the outside world, to enrich their lives, to have hope. Same can be said for over a quarter of the students in our area too, who homeschool and rely on library services as a part of their regular curriculum and enrichment. It's also a place for a lot of families who don't have access to internet. They can come and use the internet, whether our library is open or not. The Wi-Fi is on 24/7. We have a team of volunteers and financial supporters, including the Scott Museum, who has historically, I'll remind you, always donated the use of the building and utilities to keep our library open. And we're all dedicated and hoping to work together towards keeping these services available so that our community members can have continued access. Just to circle back to some of the presentations you heard this morning about hopeless community members, library services are a part of that organic outreach for community togetherness and enrichment. So it's really great to hear about all of these other services that exist to uplift our community, but the library services already do that naturally. And I think it would be to the detriment of our entire county to see our libraries close. We've had a petition going. I think that the clerk already has some signatures. I've got more to add to it. I think all in all, we've had 700 people petition that they want to see library services continue. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sally Aldinger from Hayfork. I'm a member of Trinity County Friends of the Library, but today I'm here representing the Hayfork chapter of Trinity County Friends of the Library. I wanted to build a little bit on what Elise said. Hayfork is also somewhat isolated from the services that are available to people in the Weaverville area. We're a low-income community, and our library is more than just books. The library provides social contact as well as newspapers, books, and computers, and is used by community members of all ages, including homeschoolers as well as online college students. Senior citizens walk next door from the 33-unit Eschaton Manor low-income senior housing. The library provides a cool place in the summer, a warm place in the winter, internet and computer access, DVD and VHS collections, and conversation and compassion. Our library also offers printing and fax services and assistance to access services online, such as the DMV and the Department of Water Resources annual required reports. We feel that it's important to keep the Hayfork branch open as a service to our vast, remote, low-income region of Trinity County that has a large population of isolated and underserved seniors and off-grid residents. Our library serves patrons from districts 3, 4, and 5. Dan, we have a couple people that come over from Southern Trinity to use our library. We have numerous people from Post Mountain area and from High and Palm that use the Hayfork Library. After we got over the initial shock of hearing that there was a potential closure of the Hayfork branch by November 1st, we had a community meeting of the local Friends of the Library. 60 people attended. We were able to raise $880 in an hour and a half, and we formed a fundraising committee. Our local group would like to be part of the solution. In order to do that, we feel that we need to know the exact amount of money that it costs to run the Hayfork branch and to get a commitment from the county to allow us to try to meet fundraising goals to meet the costs that are needed. So with that said, we got over our initial shock. We're not pointing any fingers. We know you're all trying to do your job to get the balanced budget, but we want to work together with you and find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Yes.
Hi, I'm Judith French from Weaverville. And I want to put a couple pictures in your heads for you to keep thinking about as you make your decisions. These animals are not only important for us to save, but it's the people that they also save. The comfort that our seniors and disabled and children get from the dogs and cats are just vital. And the image of suffering and dying animals around town for kids to see, and the diseased animals for kids to see and have to live with, is just appalling. Please help us find the money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Edith Smith. I'm from Junction City. I've lived there for over 50 years, and I'm a retired school teacher. And I'm very proud to acknowledge a couple of my former students, Chris and Travis, who did a very beautiful presentation. On the first subject I want to talk about is, of course, the closure of the library. And I'm sure you've heard all the facts and details about that. I just hope it doesn't happen. As a teacher, you can imagine, I was also an English teacher, French and German as well. When I was a kid, I used to go to the local library and load up on books like, I know it's incredible now, I don't do that anymore, but 4 or 5 books a week easily. And my goal then was I would, if ever I was restrained to a wheelchair, that is what I would do, is read books. I'm still an avid reader. I'm not in a wheelchair yet, but I just turned 80, and so there is a possibility. However, I'm also the wife or the widow of a man who worked 2 terms as a county supervisor, Jim Smith, and I know the work and the heartache and the worry that goes into forming a budget every year. I know that none of you are having ill will towards the library nor the shelter, and I don't want to belabor misinformation that might indicate that you've been squandering money. I just can't believe that. However, I do think that in your hours of working towards a solution, you will consider some of the things like the library. One point I want to make is in these long years of my residence here, I was totally pleasantly flabbergasted by the fact that the community and I assume other agencies, including the Board of Supervisors, was able to build a new library in the, in a remote community like this, a beautiful building with access to many, many people. And I hope that you find a way to help with that continues. The same happened with the shelter.
I'm sorry.
Volunteers.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. We do
Oh,
have to
I'm
keep
sorry.
it to 3 minutes, but thank you. We did note that you also wanted to mention the shelter.
Okay, well, thanks for listening to my.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christina Pierce. I just wanted to say that in the deliberations over the budget, last year, the library system got cut pretty hard, and we just shouldered that. And now that we're talking about closing the library, I'm hoping that you will find some funds that some of the other departments can cut a little from there so that the funding is more equal, then the defunding is more equal, and also the same for the shelter. And if it comes to that you really think you can't fund the libraries or you can only fund it a little bit, then we in Hayfork want to see if we can have a partnership because we want to go forward. We need that library. But you've already heard all the reasons why, but we don't want it to be an open and shut case. If something, we just want open minds so that we can figure out a way to go forward. But we're all ready to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Carrie Hurley from Weaverville. I want to applaud the initiative that I see here of leadership, because for the 2 years that I've been back home in Trinity County, what I've experienced with our leadership has been sort of the tail of the dog. It seems like with these lawsuits and just the way the whole cannabis thing went, this is what we get. This is what we get. Now we're in trouble with the budget, and now leadership has to happen, right? Stuff has to be cut. And so I applaud you guys because I know it's got to be hard to be backed into this corner. So I applaud you for the initiative of the leadership. I just don't think this is the right route to go. There's got to be grants. There's got to be money out there that we can get. I'm willing to help. I know almost all these people are probably willing to help. We are communities of volunteers. We're small town, big heart all the way. And so I hope that we can, like as someone else had mentioned, get creative and find the money. We can find the money. I know we can. I'm willing to help. I hope that the leadership initiative keeps going instead of obstacles and obstruction and all of what has been happening that I've seen. I really hope that this road continues in a very healthy way for our county. We're the poorest county in the state. We need good leaders. And so I applaud the initiative and the effort and the struggle that you guys are facing. I understand how hard it's got to be, but it's going to be even harder if we close these libraries and we close this animal shelter. Thank you.
Hello, supervisors. I'm Ann Elias. I live west of Del Loma, and I've been an acupuncturist in town for 30 years. And the animals in our community are part of people's mental health, and mental health is a concern we've heard today. And I know some kids learn to read by reading to their dogs. And they need a good place to get the books that they need to read to them. So you understand that we're all very invested in hoping those two crucial parts of our community continue to be parts of our community, and wish you wisdom and grace in finding the way to keep them funded.
Thank you very much. Do we have some people that would like to speak online? Looks like we are. Oh, we can go ahead. Go ahead, please come up.
My name is Zoe Tarbell, and I live in Hayfork at Eschaton. And a lot of the residents there do not have computers and do go to the library. And it's an important resource for us. Additionally, on the animal, somebody had mentioned the feral dogs, and that's already becoming a problem in Hayfork. These feral dogs will run in back of my apartment down to the creek. They've attacked several people in Hayfork in the last few years, not years, months, last few months. I went in Broderick one day, one man had stitches. He had been attacked that morning. And another woman had a granddaughter that was attacked by Eschaton. He was out on Brady Road. So already this is happening. There's public safety would be an issue. So these are all important to us in the community.
Thank you. Okay.
We have Heather.
Heather, we can't hear you.
Hello. Good morning. Can you
Good
hear
morning.
me? Good
Yes.
morning. I have an unstable connection, so I'm going to make this fast. Good morning, board, and thank you. And I just want to say this meeting is really powerful, seeing everybody out there and speaking their hearts. It's really wonderful. And, you know, to kind of refer to the presentations earlier, and, you know, I feel like a way to invest in Trinity County is to keep our libraries and animal shelter open, because those are the heart of the community. And it's important. Our spirit and what we represent, because those are hubs that bring people together for common missions and common goals. And so I ask the board to please do whatever they possibly can to work with all of us and invest in us. We can't expect to bring people to this county if we don't have a county that invests in us. Thank you so much. And I know you have a daunting task ahead, but I implore you to do everything you can to keep our libraries and animal shelter open. Thank you.
Karen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I just want to touch on a couple of things. One, I grew up in a place where we could not play outside as children because there were packs of wild rabid dogs roaming our valley. I don't want to see this place turn into that. And that's what's happening. I've heard about dogs getting attacked in the Pines and now hearing about this at Eschaton. That's not okay. The one thing I really want to touch on is my dogs. My two are both rescues. One was dumped as a puppy. The other was rescued from a hoarding situation, and it took several weeks to catch him. He was fostered for 5 months, and he was terrified. He shook and peed himself, and he was just terrified. And when I wanted to take him home, everybody at the shelter cried because they didn't think they were going to be able to find him a home, and they cared. So these people care. I'm going to ask you to please not ask them to euthanize the dogs that they care about. There has to be a better way, and I would like for us to find it. One third point, we care about suicide. You know what stops suicide? Dogs, books, libraries. Let's do this right. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melanie?
Hello, this is Melanie Miller from Weaverville, and I've listened to everyone talk, and I just wanted to tell you that I have been volunteering at the shelter for the last 3 years, 2 days a week. And I look in the audience to see how many of them have come down there to volunteer, but also, it is also on the community. We have to take responsibility. I just finished putting out over 1,500 license letters of people that have not licensed their dogs just this year alone. And that's revenue that needs to come in. There's also licenses that haven't been paid for in 2 and 3 years, and that too is money. They have a lot of different programs on spay and neutering. There is a lot of help out there. TASA is always out there helping the shelter. And I just think that everyone needs to take responsibility for their own actions and not dump it all just on the board and the county, but they themselves. Pay for your dog license. That would help a lot. Thank you.
Althea Christensen? I hope I pronounced that name right.
We can't hear you if you're speaking.
Okay, we'll move on to Ben.
Ben Kellogg, Weaverville. Good morning, supervisors, CAO, and staff. Many questions could not be answered at the last TASA meeting in regards to the shelter. I'd like to thank the sheriff, undersheriff, and support staff for coming out, however. Legally, the shelter in some capacity will have to stay open for mandated services by law, like the rabies program and law enforcement investigative holds. This means most likely the ACO and one staff member will be on site taking care of those types of things. That means we will need to continue a budget for keeping the lights on, water running, food bill, medical bills, feeding the animals, etc. There will be dogs at the shelter no matter what. The shelter budget is roughly $350,000 between HHS and the sheriff's budget. We need to know what the there is. How much are we actually saving by shutting down the shelter to bare minimum services, which the more you peel back the onion, those services are increasing. Adoptions will go away and other crucial current services as well. The shelter will be closed to the public at that time. We already have one shelter staff member resigning and leaving. Is it worth the Is it worth the pain that they are going through currently? If the amount saved substantially decreases from that 350,000 number, to me, it's not worth shutting the shelter down. You're not saving much, if at all, because we're keeping most current staff, which is a large chunk of the budget. As I stated previously, there will continue to be operating costs on top of that. Here's a scenario. A dog roams the streets of the county as it's a normal circumstance. Citizens call in the dog to the animal control because we've already told that there will be no stray pickups. This dog continues to roam the streets with no animal control action and eventually bites someone. This person sues the county for negligence for hundreds of thousands of dollars, which supersedes the amount that the county saved by closing the shelter to non-mandated services. Again, I ask, is it all worth it? Solution: the shelter should be transferred from the Sheriff's Department to the Health and Human Services. Having the shelter under law enforcement is an old way of thinking. HHS is the new way of thinking over the last decade of shelter management with many upsides. TASA has also offered the help in the grant process for the shelter on multiple occasions. However, the Sheriff's Department has declined our help. TASA cannot get these grants on her own as they are for the shelter and the shelter is ran by the Sheriff's Department. We're willing to do the legwork, but we need the cooperation from the Sheriff's Department. Many shelters use grants to fund things such as food, medical supplies, vaccines supplied by companies such as Purina, Hill Science, Petco, PetSmart, and so many more. We are losing out because we cannot secure these grants. Do your homework. Shelters live on long-term sustainable grants.
Thank you.
Althea?
Hello. Sorry for my previous problems with the audio. I believe you guys have received my emailed public comment that I sent last night. I just wanted to add to that, specifically about the library. I'm not sure if you're aware, but if you're taking the Trinity Transit bus from Reading to Willow Creek, there's about a 4-hour layover in Weaverville. And I've taken that a few times, going to back and forth, taking care of my mom and stuff like that. But the library is kind of the best place to wait for the majority of those 4 hours. I went and got myself a grilled cheese and a hot cocoa and explored some of the shops and stuff downtown. But I really can't sit, in one of your restaurants for 4 hours. So the library is a very important place for that too. I spent some time in there and I watched students from Weaverville High School come down with their teacher to do research on local Indian tribes and stuff like that, and access resources that they might not have had in the school library. And it really is a great place. It's a nice library. It's an important community resource for a lot of reasons. But you definitely need to keep that open for that 4-hour layover because I was not the only one waiting there. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
I have no additional raised hands.
Thank you. With that, we will move out of public comment and we will take a 10-minute break.
Way to go, Trevor. You're learning.
I'm a slow learner.
Thank you for letting us talk.
Okay, are we back, Susie? We are back in session, and we will begin with report from department heads. Are there any department heads that would like to present an update today? No? Any online?
I have none online.
Okay. And I will just say again, just because a lot of the public maybe doesn't realize this, but a great thing that has begun to happen in the last year or so is that department heads are fairly regularly providing written reports so that while it may not be taking up time here in the board meeting, they are keeping both the CAO and the board informed. And I think it's very valuable and appreciated. A report from our CAO.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two items. First is on the general plan. All the mapping functions that were discussed at the joint Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission meeting on August 22nd are operational and can be found on the Trinity 2050 website. Also, the community plan meetings that were scheduled in September are now scheduled for the second week of October. All information and the specifics for all the community plan meetings, all 8 of them that will occur the second and third week of October, just went out in e-blast this morning and are published on the Trinity 2050 website for people's information on those particular 8 communities. And then on the budget topic, the full budget book is scheduled to be available for the public on September 6th. So this Friday, close of business, as we have consistently been advertising over the past few weeks. There will be a Trinity Journal official notice that will come out on this Wednesday, which says the budget book will be available no later than September 9th. And that is the official date as we lead up to October 2nd, adopting a budget. But again, as we've been advertising, and what we will do is, no later than close of business on the 6th, the budget book will be available. And then budget hearings, as were stated earlier in this meeting, are scheduled to start on September 24th. That's all I've got for now.
Thank you. All right, from our Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Cox, would you please start us off? And if you would, go ahead and include your update from the ad hoc as well when you're doing that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just 3 quick things. Really, the first one, as many letters as we send out, it's encouraging to get one back once in a while. So I don't know if I'm the only one or if all 5 supervisors got a letter from Alex Padilla expressing his support for our 3-year renewal of secure rural schools that we have been begging for. So nice to understand that he'll continue to support that at the federal level. Second thing is to inform you that the Caltrans Zero Emission Vehicle Planning Grant that we applied for through RCRC last January, we were not awarded. RCRC is having conversations with Caltrans to where we can and will be reapplying. There should be a notice of funding coming out shortly, and we can consider looking at that from not just partnering with 2 other counties as we were doing before, Modoc and Siskiyou, but looking at it as a regional plan, not just a regional fund. So that's yet to come. And then to let you know that as an extension of the service that I do on the NorCal EMS Executive Board, I did volunteer to serve on the recently formed California Rural EMS Funding Coalition. This is a coalition that was the brainchild of our own Brooke Ensmiger of the Southern Trinity Area Rescue in an effort to elevate the need for not only truly equitable, but sustainable emergency services to frontier counties. The end goal would be that EMS is recognized by the state as thank you. What I typed and what I was thinking are 2 different things. Sorry. As an essential service. And we have partnerships included in this representation from EMS agencies, including NorCal, Sierra Sacramento, Imperial County, North Coast, and Santa Barbara. Regarding the ad hoc that Chair Lutweiler formed, I've spent this time diving into, it's called a CSA, a County Service Area. This is a funding mechanism utilized by many counties statewide. The history on it is extensive and interesting. It does allow for the public to bring the idea forward by petition, or the Board of Supervisors can bring it forward. It does involve LAFCO to identify what your service area will be and potential zones within that service area. So you can do something that's county-wide. Within those zones, you can have identical funding participation or varied. It likely involves an engineer, kind of surprisingly, to do that mapping and scoping and determine what, the law says that the degree of support that each participant who's providing funding receives should be equitable to what they're giving. And so that's a bit of a puzzle to put that all together. So, we would likely need a consultant to the tune of approximately $50,000. It does eventually go to a vote. So if we wait for a regular election, that's a 2-year cycle coming up, or you can hold a special election, which is another $70,000 roughly. So there's cost involved to getting these started. I have spoken with leadership from Butte County and Yuba counties specifically. They have multiple, like dozens of CSAs within. So Butte County, for example, for their animal control, they fund this through a county service area. For the cost of their animal shelter and the number of parcels that they have, each of their residents pays $5 per year to fund it. So I've roughly done a little bit of math, and it would depend on, how we ended up structuring things, but you could feasibly consider that about $60 per parcel per year from folks countywide would take care of the animal shelter. There's pros and cons. You do need to be careful that you look to future funding escalation and not get trapped and not being able to continue to pay for it, because adjusting one of these is far more challenging than it is to form one. So that's a red flag for consideration. So as I continue to look at them, and when we have our community meetings, we can certainly dive into Q&A. I don't have all the questions answered yet. It's been an interesting look. I think of most interest is the number of counties statewide that do utilize these. I think it's not easy for us to realize that when we as individuals in our own households see our own budgets struggling, the county feels this too. The prices that are rising for us personally are rising for everyone. And the way to have what you want is to decide what that is, what your priorities are, and then what you're willing to pay for that. So there are a lot of considerations, but that's the one that I've done the deepest dive into.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And just a couple of comments as a fellow member of that, but Supervisor Cox definitely has the lead on this research. One of the things that's unique about the county service area approach is that those funds are dedicated to a specific use. So if you increase sales tax, that goes into X funds can be used however. Property taxes have their uses, all those sorts of things. If and when these are put in place, the intended use is designated, and it has to be used for that purpose only. So that's one of the reasons that this could potentially be appropriate and valuable. We've also been, as we heard in public comments, thinking about the nonprofits that are in place and how they could be potentially leveraged, if you will, to help fill a gap, and the volunteers and support, and grants that were mentioned, and other sources of income that we could help offset this, because the realities are that even though we'll dig way deeper into this once we have the budget and have our budget hearings, there just isn't enough money for everything. And what, when I was listening to people talk about the animal shelter specifically and about the concerns of the animals running loose and the public health safety, which I get, and I have two dogs that have come from shelters in the last few years, the concern that I also place on this, and I know Supervisor Cox and I have had these discussions, is we haven't really gotten into discussions with the public about where we are with our law enforcement. And the reductions that we've had to make there are very extreme. And so we have very limited resources available to go out and provide public safety from that standpoint. So these are not easy choices to make, but we're trying to focus right now as a subcommittee on other ways that revenues could be brought in that might help offset that. And then the budget hearing, of course, will be where we really dig in and say, well, what do we do with what we have? And what would be our plans for transitioning to something different if something different is in fact where we land? So I just wanted to share that additional piece. Thank you for your update. Supervisor Gogan, would you like to go next?
Yes, I would. First off, thanks everybody who commented today. It's a tough place to be up here when we're going through the cuts that we are, and we are trying our hardest. I want you to know that we are giving it everything we got. We're open to everything. This is not something we want to do. It's a tough spot. First of all, I had a town hall meeting last week that was attended by 30, 40, 50 people. We spoke mostly about the animal shelter and the library and Measure M. We've gone through the animal shelter and the library kind of extensively today. Measure M is Greater Hayfork Valley District Park Tax that will be on the ballot this year. It's going to raise the park tax for a certain district in Hayfork from $10 per parcel to $30, which will increase the revenue brought in from $19,000 to $57,000. And the budget is about a little over $60,000 for the Hayfork Community Park. So it'll get us very close there. If this is not passed, I'm afraid that park will close. And I want people to know this is not a county-wide tax. It's just a tax on the people in that community district. Sally brought it forth in the late 80s, I think early 90s at $10 a parcel. And as we all know, $10 doesn't go nearly as far as it did then as it does now. So this is very important. We're starting to get a run up to that so we can get that passed in November. And we'll be having more meetings about that in the near future. We also had a general plan meeting at Hayfork, which was sparsely attended and kind of a disappointment in what I saw and the amount of people that were there. We have 8 more community plan workshops coming up. Our planning people really need the input of the people of Trinity County in each district, my district, District 3, especially. This is a time to show up, get your voice heard, let people know what you think about the zoning or anything that is coming up in the community plan. Bella and company could really use the help of the input from the general public. So I hope everybody can turn out for those coming up. The next one, they've been moved, as Trent said, from September to October, mid-October. We have one in Douglas City on 5:30 on the 15th, and then on the 16th, the following evening in the dining hall in Hayfork at 5:30 p.m. They'll both be at 5:30 in the afternoon. I also went with Supervisor Lutweiler on a float with Trinity River Restoration Program last week. It was an informative float on some of the projects they've done and some of the projects they are going to do. It was a nice float. Everybody had a good time, and it was good to be there. I also attended a meeting, I think Friday night, with CAO Tuthill, Science on Tap, which had to do with pool stratification, which I won't go into now because I don't think anybody will understand it, but it was informational to myself and I think to CAO Tuthill. The last thing I want to stress here is that we need participation at the community workshops that we're going to have. We have to have it. It's going to let the planners of this county know what the people of each district needs. So please show up, participate, have your word heard by us and the planners and Mr. Harness. It's very important. So we need good turnouts. There's going to be 8 more coming up, 2 in my district, and I hope as many people can participate as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody they've left the room, but some folks are still online, for your enthusiasm and desire to make sure that our shelter and our library stay open. I think, as the other supervisors have said, it's something that it matters to us, and we're trying to make sure that we take time to listen to all the concerns, and then also, as Supervisor Cox mentioned, and also Supervisor Litweiler, looking into the ways that other counties are funding these services. I've spent a lot of time reading all of the emails. It's impossible to answer everyone, so apologize that you're not all getting an email back, but our inboxes are flooded with these as we've seen today. So is our public comment period. So it really does matter. And we all are looking at ways other small counties fund their libraries and animal shelters. And we are all trying to feed those ideas and possibilities into this process so that we can come up with a solution. But I do just want to say one of my favorite sayings when something doesn't work out is, what got us here isn't going to get us there. So we were here last year with both of these areas, and now we're here again. And so change is difficult. We only make change when the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change. And so we are in a place where change is clearly going to have to be part of the solution, and what that looks like and how that is successful is our responsibility. And when I say our, I don't just mean us, I mean all of our responsibility to find a way to provide for these services that everyone cares about deeply. So I just want to let you know that it's not being overlooked or just not paid attention to. We really do care. I spent some time, I got to go on a tour of the Ag Commissioner's office, got to spend some time meeting staff there, which was very enjoyable. Had a wonderful visit with some of our planning folks, so that was good. I really like in encountering our county staff. They all really do have a heart for the work that they do. I joined CAO Tuthill at Junction City Park after last board meeting to look at a prescribed burn project, which I hope goes ahead and works out well. It will be very, very good for that site. And then met with a landowner who has some concerns about some road work there in Junction City. So always trying to get out on the ground with folks when they have concerns about the community that they're living in. I did attend the NCRP illegal grow cleanup meeting, and we're taking more information around that to the meeting on October 18th that will be held in Crescent City. And just looking at ways that we can help our communities clean up sites that have either been abandoned or sites that are left over from illegal cleanups that haven't completely been cleaned up, and how we can help the environment in that arena. I am having tonight a meeting in High Palm with the folks so that I can get out there and hear their concerns about the budget and upcoming issues. And I'm planning one for Junction City, working with the folks there to set that up. I do just want to take a minute to say welcome back to school to all of the students in my district, and for the kids that live downriver and ride that bus for an hour to get to Trinity High or better. I feel for you. Both my kids did it, but I am happy to see school back. I love the enthusiasm. I love campus in fall. I love football games and all of the stuff that the fall brings when the students come back to campus. And I'm so grateful that we have all of the teachers who go to work every day to make sure that our students are learning. So thank you for that. And in closing, I just want to say, I just want to say to our nation at large, that we need to take a minute to remember an American hostage that was found, had been killed in Gaza. I know that those families are suffering terribly, waiting to find out if their person is living or not, and living with the concerns of what may be happening to them. But we lost an American this week, and I know that their family is mourning that loss, and it's not lost on us. It's not lost on me anyway. So God be with them.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier.
Okay. I had no out of county travel since our last board meeting. I did have a behavioral health advisory board meeting on the 21st here in Weaverville. That's one of the boards I'm on that is struggling to have enough people. We struggled to even make a quorum in that, but actually should have an item on the agenda soon to appoint someone new. I think it should on to the agenda today. And consent, which will help. We've only had 3 board members on that commission, so if anybody was absent, we were done. Besides that, only other issues I have coming up, I have a North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District Board coming up in September on the 12th, and there will be a CGT CAP meeting on the 25th in Orland. And that, it looks simple in my book.
Thank you. All right. For District 1, community meetings that we've been hearing about that. It's great to see all the supervisors reaching out to their constituents. I have 3 meetings scheduled across District 1, one that's shared with Supervisor Cox this Thursday, I believe it is, the 5th. And then also in Lewiston and Trinity Center. And we anticipate a lot of the focus will be on information regarding budget challenges and sharing options and getting engagement around that. Did complete a board chair effectiveness survey that I mentioned in previous meetings. So I appreciated the participation of department head, staff, CAO supervisors, and the results of that were informative and will help me as I try to improve my efforts for the balance of my term as chair. And all those results were shared back with the people that were invited to participate in the survey so that they can see what the collective input was. But it's very helpful to receive the information. CSAC board meeting took place. It was in Sacramento. Because of other scheduling conflicts, I decided to join via Zoom. So it was the first time I did that via Zoom instead of in person. It's about a 4-hour meeting, but we were, among other things, making decisions about what CSAC would and wouldn't support, take a position in supporting. So I did just want to highlight for Proposition 5, which is a local government financing measure, CSAC board voted to support that measure. Proposition 35, which provides permanent funding for Medi-Cal healthcare services. There's a lot of discussion about this, and in the end, it did not receive enough votes from board members for CSAC to take a positive supporting position. So basically, CSAC will have no position on that measure. Proposition 36, the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. That one did receive enough votes, so it will be supported by CSAC. And Proposition 4, a climate bond. This item did receive enough votes for CSAC support. That particular item is a ballot measure that would allocate funds in state general obligation bond, basically to fund climate-related programs. And there's a lot of detail that I shared with supervisors so they could see all the rest of the story, if you will, that led into those decisions. California Jobs First, the meeting taking place in Anderson this week. Is it this week or next week? I think it's this week. And that's when a larger group will be coming together to see the results of the rating of all the different projects that were submitted, including at least 5 that I know of from Trinity County. So I'm anxious to learn how the projects that were submitted by people within Trinity County fared in that funding decision. Sierra Nevada Conservancy, we have a meeting in Mount Shasta on Thursday, so I'll be going from Anderson up to Mount Shasta for that meeting. And next year I'll be the voting member for that. This year I'm a board member, but just not a voting position. And NACO, just wanted to note that I was confirmed again this year as a member of the Telecommunications and Technology Steering Committee. And that just gives us a seat at the table to provide input when that group is trying to make decisions for NACO level. Heidi is, Supervisor Carpenter Harris is our primary representative and goes to the board meetings and the conventions. This is something I can do via Zoom and just participate in a specific subgroup. And that is my update. We already covered under reports from ad hocs, the funding sources. And Supervisor Carpenter Harris, I know that you've already let us know that the tribal representatives who were going to present today will reschedule. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, just, I was very excited for them to present today. I'm super sorry that there's some illness there. So I'm looking forward to looking at, hopefully we can get it in by the end of the year. That would be great. So I'm looking forward to their presentations and hopefully our support and their desire for recognition by our county.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move into the consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters and will be acted upon by the board by one roll call motion. If a member of the public has any questions or comments on an item on the consent calendar, they may provide them now. A member of the board or staff may request an item be pulled and considered separately. So I will open this up for public comment on the consent calendar. What's the item? That was what Supervisor Cox included in her other update. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so you're waiting for that. So she had her comments and that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, we've covered that as much as we're going to for today. Okay. If you, oh, no, so we're going to do the consent calendar, which hopefully will go quickly. And then we do public comments before each of the items on the county matters section. So that'll be very soon, I hope. So for consent calendar, I read the introduction, just see if we have any public comment about the consent calendar.
I have no raised hands.
Okay, and I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to pull item D4.
D4. Okay.
Chairman Leweiler, I would like, I don't know what Supervisor Frazier's questions are, but I would like that we pull that just entirely for consideration, not even discussion, and I'll bring it back.
Just remove it?
Yeah.
All right, so I can go over my concerns with you and you can.
Please do.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Any other items that you would like to have pulled for discussion or pulled completely?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the remainder of the consent calendar.
Oh.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and second.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris?
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Chairman Leweiler?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're moving into county matters. And again, for folks, these items include non-routine or controversial matters and are listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board, staff, or public may request that an item be heard out of order. Is there anyone that
Regarding order, and council, I may need your guidance. I'm wanting to put before this board whether we need to entertain a letter that we would send to the governor as an emergency item regarding AB 1111, because we are uncertain as to the timing that that's moving through, and he could be looking at a signature or veto before our next meeting.
So let's do that now and we'll list it as D11.
Okay.
Oh, no, what's
E5.
E5?
Five?
But let's do the motion first, put it on as E5.
Okay, so I would make a motion that we add that to our, not consent, but our county matters for consideration.
We actually added it as a subsequent, which is a separate section.
Okay, as a subsequent.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
We'll also need to make the findings that the information received regarding this item was received after the posting of the agenda. And as Supervisor Cox has stated, it requires action prior before the next agenda. So that is why it would be an emergency item. So we would need a 4/5 vote in order to do that.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. And for discussion, just make note that, in fact, we did receive an email recently giving us the information and noting that this action could be of importance and needed quickly. So thank you for that. Well, I guess, so do we have to have public comment on that?
Yes.
Okay. So for the public, this is basically about us adding an emergency item that, because it came in afterwards and action needs to be taken before the next board meeting. And so we have a motion about this just to make sure that we had it there to even discuss. Now we're going to stop and take public comment. Is there any in the room? Any online?
I have no raised hands.
Okay, so let's do a vote on that.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
Aye.
Supervisor Cox.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Supervisor Gokin.
Aye.
Chairman Litwiler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will go back to
Thank you.
the county matters. Any other things that we'd like to hear out of order? I will ask that we move E2 to the beginning, just because I know there's some people here that are specifically waiting on that, and that would allow them to move on, and we have to cover everything else anyway. Is that okay with that? Okay, so we'll handle that first. Is there, let's see, I guess we need to, my device thinks I'm talking to it. Okay, so the item then is County Administrative Office, discuss and or provide direction to staff regarding the allocation method for the county's potential discretionary and local agency and tribal consistency fund contribution to enhance tourism. Fiscal impact depends upon direction to staff. And CAO Tuttle, are you introducing that?
Yes, Chair. So this topic has been discussed, I would say, minimally in different forms at different budget hearings throughout the year. In the staff report, it lays out the various methodologies that have been used and the various amounts that have been used in this category for funding back to the FY13 time period all the way through the current fiscal or the past fiscal year that just completed. So there are a number of options that were laid out in the staff report to at least get the discussion going and for board consideration. And then obviously if there's any combination of those or another item or another methodology that the board would like us to take, we'd be more than willing to do that and comply. The desire is to get this direction to staff as we're finalizing the budget book, so we can at least put some numbers in there. And then obviously those won't get completely finalized until the actual budget gets adopted. But this will give us a framework and the methodology to start this process going forward. I'll leave it at that and then can entertain questions as we get into any type of discussion.
Okay. With that, I will ask if people have questions on the board for CAO Tuttle. Otherwise, we'll go to public comment.
I do have some questions. In the staff report provided, when we move through the history and look at the percentages, there are places here where we see that funds were allocated to the Trinity County Chamber of Commerce And then it's listed out who those partners were that they were to distribute funds to, and it would say and themselves. But not each time is the Trinity County Chamber of Commerce listed as one of those. So it is in the, so if you're on page, these were numbered, looks like page 2 of the staff report. In the top section, I do see Trinity County Chamber of Commerce receiving 33.3% in those timeframes. As you move down to the 1920 fiscal year, I don't see Trinity County Chamber of Commerce. And sorry for not asking you sooner, challenging just yesterday being the holiday, but is there a way to understand where that percentage lies?
You want me to take this one, Trent? In fiscal year 1920, when we switched the way we were providing that allocation, it was presented to us, to county admin at that time, that the Trinity County Chamber of Commerce had dissolved and that the Visitors and Development Bureau was created to take its place. So you see, moving forward down into 1920, the Chamber of Commerce is not there, correct, but the Visitors and Development Bureau gets that similar percentage.
That helps. So
Not at this time.
I can't. And then we saw in the presentation this morning, excuse me, that the Visitors and Development Bureau has been dissolved. Is that then returned to Trinity County Chamber of Commerce?
That is information that was provided during the final true up of the last fiscal year's contract. So moving into the next fiscal year's contract is kind of essentially what we're trying to figure out. How do you want us to allocate those funds? What method do we want to use? And then we would go from there.
Okay, all right.
Other questions?
Potentially.
Okay.
Just trying to decide when the best time is to ask the questions. So probably those are the ones for clarity.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions at this time?
Not now.
Okay.
We'll get in discussion after.
All right. So at this point, we will open up for public comment.
Good afternoon. So I'm Trish Harris. I'm representing the Weaverville Chamber of Commerce. And regarding what Supervisor Cox was just mentioning, because the Trinity County Chamber has absorbed the Visitors and Development Bureau, they are now moving forward, assumedly going to be receiving the percentages of both entities. And according to the staff report, they've always been separate unless they were considered one entity. But in the past, they were considered two entities. Travis, I'm sure, can expound on this a little as well. But they were considered two entities and not with two separate percentages, and now they have been absorbed. So as the Weaverville Chamber of Commerce, I would like to propose a reassessment of the percentages and how they are distributed to the TOT partners based on whatever that percentage of funds may be, whatever the TOT funds are, which we obviously don't know at this point, but whatever that bank is, to reassess the percentages and how they are doled out. According to the last percentage list giving fiscal year 23-24, almost 50% of the money that was in there went to the Visitors and Development Bureau. So that's obviously a large piece of the pie. So I think it just needs to be reassessed now that that merger has happened. Also, the Weaverville Chamber has historically received between 3 to 5% of this fund, which is obviously very small. That equates to about, well, what we're receiving now is $3,724 per year in funding. And Weaverville Chamber of Commerce produces the biggest revenue driving events in the county, including the 4th of July fireworks event. So that's definitely something we'd like to look at. Also, the Weaverville Chamber would like to do, we have a plan for first quarter development for Weaverville that would require some funding support. So as we're assessing these percentages, we'd like to put out there that we have a plan on how to produce commerce during the dry season for businesses, which is first quarter. As a business owner downtown, I own a little boutique on Main Street. I have now had the opportunity to experience a first quarter and a full year, and it is very, very challenging to bounce back from. So we, just with my own experience and the business owners' experiences downtown, we would like to put forth that we have a plan for first quarter commerce development, and we'd like that to be considered with the TOT funds. I obviously can't go into all of it now, but we'd like to bring that forward and present it as options to the board. Lastly, in regards to the request for community workshop engagement and the CSA and TBID solutions, the Weaverville Chamber of Commerce would love to be a part of those solutions and conversations. We'd like to lend support and ideas. So please consider us a partner, and we'd love to be invited to those. So we'd like to talk about TOT funds distribution and how the Weaverville Chamber and the events that we produce can help create a strong ROI for the county, because we know that you need it. So yeah, please consider us a friend, a partner, an ally, and let us know how we can support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Travis Finch, Trinity County Chamber of Commerce. And I did want to offer a little bit of background information on how the Visitors and Development Bureau previously fit into this whole equation. So the Visitors and Development Bureau was formed in 2016 as a nonprofit arm of the Trinity County Chamber so that it could go after grant funding. And subsequently, the decision was made, this is prior to my involvement with either organization, that the TOT funding would, instead of going to the Trinity County Chamber, go to the Visitors and Development Bureau, since its primary focus was tourism marketing, and that's ostensibly what the TOT funding was supposed to be used for. Subsequent to that, the participation in the Visitors and Development Bureau was kind of lacking because it was primarily the board was made up of lodging owners who during tourist season are not really available to govern the organization. So as part of our merger and unification discussions that we've had in prior years and was presented to you all last summer, the Visitors and Development Bureau has now been rolled back into the Trinity County Chamber, and it has the same governing board. And so that's why in the presentation you saw earlier today and the request that you have before you, that the Visitors and Development Bureau is no longer listed. Also, in prior years, I want to say back 2016, the county cut a check directly to the Chamber of Commerce, and then the Chamber of Commerce was responsible for distributing the funds to those individual organizations. That I don't know why the decision was made to move away from that. I think it may have had something to do with the tax status of the Chamber of Commerce receiving such a large influx of cash. May have changed its tax status, and so the decision was made to go to the current model. Now speaking on the presentation you got earlier today and the potential allocation of these funds, I will state that the board in Trinity County is getting huge return on investment. As was shown in the presentation, we're requesting $170,000, and that is matched dollar for dollar by the TOT recipient organizations. And we also have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of volunteer time given annually. I would hate to see this funding cut because in prior years, the Chamber of Commerce alone had $80,000 allocated to it, and it would be hard to do more with less. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Yes.
Hi, Carrie Hurley from Weaverville again. And I just want to reiterate what Travis said. I'm representing the Trinity County Chamber of Commerce here as a member and as well as a volunteer at the Visitor Center. And so I manage the kiosks for all the brochures for tourism here in Trinity County. So that's something that we actually are doing now down at Straw House, over at in Hayfork, at the discount store there, as well as at the Visitor Center and at Holiday Market. So we're starting to actually take inventory of how many brochures are in those kiosks and how many are taken out. We're really starting to gain some traction here, and I would hate to see our funding decrease while we're starting to really gain momentum, because this momentum can be very powerful, and I just don't want it to slow down. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, comments online.
I have Veronica.
Hi, this is Kelly Alves, Douglas City, and also a member of the Weaverville Chamber of Commerce. I want to encourage you to keep this funding going for these TOT partners. It's very rare in Trinity County to find such a group that comes together for a common goal and a common benefit to the whole county. While we each have our own bubbles that we work in, together we've been able together. Sorry, I'm on a plane, so give me just a moment. Sorry. It's very rare that you find this kind of put together, work together, and leveraging all of the funds and volunteers to create these special key events. We do want to remind you that of very many groups that come forward, we have a really strong ROI, return on investment, and the volunteer power alone will not make this work. We need that additional support through the funding, and the business adage about to spend money to make money really comes true. Every one of our TOT partners has worked together to leverage the funding that we do get. And I love the new Lewiston group wanting to, I would encourage whoever we for the, it's as small as it is, a piece of the pie, but I just encourage you to keep investing in Trinity County and the volunteers and the organizations that work tirelessly to make sure everybody in the world knows about us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you could mute me, I don't know how to do it on my phone. Sorry.
I have no additional raised hands.
Okay. With that, I think, again, what staff is looking for is some direction from the board as to how to reflect our, at this point, intentions about funding for tourism, so that when they complete the budget draft, it includes at least what we have to say here today. So I'll open that up to discussions. But please, not everybody at once.
Well, do we need to make a motion before we can discuss, or we?
No, my understanding is because it's just direction to staff, this is our discussion, and if we reach some level of consensus, that can be the direction to staff.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, while people are thinking, for me, I'll just set the stage. And I've had conversations with representatives of these groups, and there's a couple things. One is, I think it is important to understand, even though there's a lot of contention and opinion about this, but the funding that we receive via the transient occupancy tax, which has been voted down for increase twice by the county, is a general fund revenue source. So it goes into the general fund discretionary spending. So all those comments that we heard today about the library, the animal shelter, and I mentioned law enforcement, that is another use for those funds. So when we think about these, we need to be considering all the things that we're being asked to fund and consider that. I think the other that I mentioned after the presentation is the information we received in the presentation did not include a recently formed organization that is playing at least as big a role as I can see of most of these organizations, the Lewiston nonprofit, who puts on the Peddler's Fair and the bridge lighting. And when I looked at the social media data that was presented to us and the social media data I found online about that organization, it was equal to or better than what I saw from these organizations. So I think to the extent that we're talking about continuing to allocate funding, there to me is absolutely no reason that that group should not be included in the discussions and decision-making. And at that, I'll just stop and see what others have to say. I have more to say, but I want to let people talk, and I just wanted to set the stage.
Statement to make, and it has to do with the lodge owners that Travis mentioned earlier. When we tried to pass the TOT tax a couple years back, those lodge owners banded together to not pass the TOT tax, which was a loss of over $300,000 that we could really use today. So I would urge them, when we bring this tax forward again, to get behind this. And it's not going to cure all of our problems by any means at all, but we certainly need to pass the TOT tax that currently is at 5%, which is the lowest in the state by at least 5%. I think the next lowest is 10%, if not just a little higher than that. So it was befuddling to me that we couldn't pass it. It's a tax on nobody in this county. We need to make a better effort and get everybody on board next time we try to pass this tax, probably in 2026. We missed out on $300,000 plus that we really could use right now. Of course, it won't solve everything, but every dollar counts. So my statement is to get behind it, please.
One of the things I would like us to have a little bit of discussion about is that the percentages that are here, we look back over many years, and I don't even remember. I know it maybe different folks have tried to explain it to me at different points, how these numbers were arrived at. But I think that today, what we see is that there is some return on investment coming from folks who receive very little percentage-wise. And so the allocation in distribution, and this is beyond how much, we want to allocate in a budget overall, but the distribution itself, I think, is something worth considering. And to understand that an entity from Lewiston, without receiving any funds from the county, was able to generate better social media return than those that did, leaves a question in my mind as to how well, or I guess how necessary funding is in order to do that. So it leaves me with questions as to, we have given $60,000 toward one marketing director and another, $1,300 a month times 12 months toward a secondary assistant. Is that the best use of funding? Stands as a question in my mind. One of the options that we were provided was, do we want to continue to move forward in that direction? And so I don't know if it's appropriate for today's discussion because it's not really agendized as such, but looking at, has this gone well? We waited 6 months after funding to even see somebody show up. And so now we're another 4 months forward from that. So we haven't gotten to see what a year of this does. And I don't know in this discussion, if we can hear information on how well that's gone or not.
I would rather hear from everyone else first before we re-engage.
Okay, fair. But I do think that hearing an opportunity to hear ideas that people have to put forward from their entities, we received the one in writing. Well, I'm not seeing other ideas, but I'm hearing of them and feel like it's fair that we consider all of those things and not just put a lump of money and, where I'm not convinced I'm seeing data onto a return on investment with this amount of time and the money that we've allocated already. It doesn't feel secure. Okay.
Supervisor Frazier, did you have anything you wanted to add as we go in this?
I was just looking at the proposals sent
to us in the staff report from administration, and I'm kind of leading toward the RFP processes where it's like, instead of us setting up here, trying to determine how best to spend funds, let's get some actual requests from people who are going to be spending it, and then we can make a decision on who's presenting us with the best options, the best ideas, and the best use of that money. And then we can allocate the funds where they're going to be best used, rather than just putting the money out there and then having people maybe tell us later how they spent it. I'm leaning more toward an RFP process.
In your RFP process, are you saying that the county would put this out broadly? The expense of doing that then would also be a consideration, right?
I don't know how broadly we would have to put that out. I would lean on the CAO for the RFP process. I think he started a time or two. But
Go ahead, Chair, or whoever you are.
So there's a couple different ways that could work. We have and could do an RFP out of administration out to the different organizations. I don't know that I would recommend that one, but there's also the possibility of having an organization lead this effort for the on your behalf and run a similar RFP process. That they would go out and determine with their board makeup however to spend these funds the best. That would require a certain level of understanding and support, and acknowledge that board would then spend the funds that the county would give them to the best of their ability. So that would be something that the board would have to come to. It would require a fair amount of admin time from the front office to run an RFP for us and then bring that stuff back to the board. And then just the timing of that would be very staff heavy in my mind and cumbersome for the amount of money we're talking about. It is significant, don't get me wrong, but we will eat up a fair amount of just staff time, salary wise, trying to distribute $70,000.
If we're going to do an RFP type process, you'd be leaning more toward like suggestion number 5, where we allocate funds to Chamber of Commerce and they do the RFP.
Yes.
Okay, Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
All of these, my eyes landed on option number 5 as well as an idea. I just, when I think about taking funds right now out of our general fund, I have to think about my districts and how much the people in my district benefit from this process and from these organizations. And that's something that matters to me. Like, is everyone in the county benefiting equally from what this is going to provide? That's one of the thoughts that I have in that process.
Okay, thank you. And Supervisor Gogan, sounded like you had something else you wanted to offer?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jill, the first part you said was the 5,000 to 1,500 that we're spending now. Are you looking for that to be currently, we haven't seen our return on that yet. So are you waiting for that to be like a year project? We see what we get for the money we spent and then go from there? Because we certainly haven't given it enough time to.
Agreed. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that there was a 6-month delay before anybody was even hired. Now we're 4 months into them having spent that money. It doesn't feel comfortable to me to refund that allocated pocket, not knowing what
Return it.
what the return is going to be on that. I would like to suggest a potential option 8 for consideration. That we use the same nonprofits that we have, that we consider adding the Lewiston that has stepped up to say, hey, we want to be a player. And we've heard people come forward to say today, to say, hey, we have new ideas. We want to participate in ways we've never participated before. I would like to hear those ideas. So I know that staff is looking for something that's important to give them some direction on today, number-wise, but I would like to see project and event goals and reports. I would like to see us potentially reallocate the percentages based on need for project implementation, with looking at specific projects and what they want to do. So I kind of looked at what did I see return on investment on, and from each of our districts. I can see a peddler's fair and bridge lighting in District 1. I see 4th of July in District 2. I see a fair in District 3. In District 4, you do some downriver, and I'm not sure what those events are, but I know there's some things there that get advertised through the County Chamber of Commerce.
I do believe that some of the events that occur in Junction City are advertised. The commerce, yeah.
And in District 5, Ruth Lake does a large event once a year, I believe. Okay. And so if we could, because we need to look at whole of county, how are each of these projects? I'd just like to see those folks come forward and say, what does this look like? What have you done? What have you seen? Like, we've seen growth in the chart that was provided to us from this entity specifically. And I think it's important for us to look at, to get very specific about these goals, because again, to our chair's point, these dollars can go other places, and I'm not lessening the importance of any one of the places. Saying we've already heard passion today about our libraries, our shelter. We haven't even talked about our law enforcement, our jail health.
Okay, I would like to weigh in. I think one of the things, just to the point you were making, Supervisor Cox, is the difference that I believe exists here that was highlighted in some of the presentations is there is the potential for a financial return on investment from the use of these funds for tourism. You know, if we invest that money in the library, we're investing in our kids and our communities and so forth. If we invest in a shelter, we are as well, but those will not return revenues. So when we talk about what Supervisor Carpenter Harris said about the potential, you know, like if you aren't going to change something, you're not going to get anything different. You've got to find a way forward. And so to me, this is one of those ways forward. We heard mention of the transient occupancy tax and historical failures in getting that increased. We've heard mention of tourism investment districts. Those are ways that additional funds can be generated. And if people see that we're having a positive impact with the use of funds, then I think it's more likely that people would then step up and vote for those ways of generating new funds. And so I do see value in that. I share the concerns that I've heard from people about. I think we got, for what we awarded and the checks that we issued about this time last year, or at least authorized this time last year, we got a very poor return on investment. Some of that had to do with the delays in hiring the people. Some of it had to do with how they've been able to carry out their work since being hired. And so I struggle with moving forward in the same manner that we have without seeing something different. And so my thought, just because right now we're not trying to award the funds, we're trying to decide what do we include in the budget. My suggestion would be that we have, we set aside the 70,000 that we've historically set aside, but with no indication of which groups it goes to or how much goes to the groups, that we at this time don't plan on using any LATCF funding, and basically say that since the individuals for which the LATCF funding was provided were not hired for 9 months, that means there should be 9 months left of that funding, which means we have time to reconsider about using more LATCF funds later, and that we basically say, use the funds that you were given, come back in 3 months and show the results and the impact of the funding that you provided in that way, and whatever funding we decide, if any, to offer through the budgeting process, and then make our decisions. So that would be from a budgeting standpoint for Susie, I guess, to have clarity about what to do. I don't know how the LATCF distribution would be reflected in the budget anyway, but my at least recommendation is don't authorize any more right now, and that we would continue with the 70,000, if that's the right number, that we generally allocate, but without any indication of which organizations it might go to. And knowing that we would obviously have the ability in the budget hearings to fine tune that and go from there. We're not open to public comment. No, I did not. I appreciate that, but we're in session with the board and staff right now.
That's fine. My question.
Just as you're clear,
Would,
seek whatever clarity you need, and then they can weigh in on my recommendation.
so with that, my question would be, when are we wanting to come back? Because as soon as we have budget hearings and an adopted budget, I'm going to start getting questions from these groups saying, when are we getting our money? When are we getting our money? Oh, the county missed a payment. I've gotten those questions in the past when I was behind on being able to get the contract here to the board to allocate those funds. So when would you like us to kind of just timeframe-ish, when would you like to see this back to be able to give us that direction on how we want to see these funds allocated to those entities? That way, when we do get those questions, we can say, we're bringing it back to the board in a November-ish, October, whatever timeframe, for their direction on how we're going to move forward with the allocation of the funds that were budgeted for this purpose. Is that?
Yeah, I think, I do believe that for the purposes that we have on the agenda today, what I said is direction financially. The decisions about what we finally decide and how those funds are allocated, I would say, that could be resolved in our budget hearings. And if it isn't, then we can decide, it's to set a time frame for that. My understanding is that some of the checks that we authorized as early as July of last year were not issued until this year. So I don't feel a huge sense of urgency to act when we feel like we need more information to act. So I agree, we need to get back to people. People need to understand what they will or won't get and when they might get it and all that kind of stuff. But I don't feel like we need to commit to that today. But I do agree we need to commit to it soon.
And that's fair. I just essentially want to know what I'm telling them, because I'm the one that they're going to catch in the hallway. I'm the one that's going to get the emails and the phone calls. And I just want to make sure that I am providing your desired direction back to them.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Okay.
And so with this, are you suggesting that there would be an opportunity for people to share with us what their visions and plans and goals that they would allocate if they were asking? We were looking at percentages being adjusted. When do you picture that would take place, or how?
Well, but my view is that's possible that could happen between now and the budget hearings. We could also set aside time. We could create an ad hoc committee that meets with people and they bring back to the board a recommendation. I'm open to that.
That might be productive.
Yeah, I'm open to what people would like to do. I'm just trying to get this item addressed so that we know what are we putting aside in the budget, what are we not putting aside in the budget, And then we can figure out, okay, eventually we have to make a decision. Are we using what we set aside in the budget? How are we using what we set aside? And if we're not making immediate decisions about the allocation amongst these groups, we need to give some indication of when we would.
I would say that it's not likely that we'd be able to have that discussion before budget hearings. That's would be our next board meeting. So to have, I just don't see that happening, but at budget hearings, maybe, but then my suggestion would be if we're going to go this route, we would schedule an agenda item for October, early in October, and give those entities an opportunity to speak, and we would need to have a proposal. So who would be the one that we would task with coming up with that proposal? Is that going to be something that you would want to have an ad hoc do, or is that something you're going to, or are we going to put that on staff to come up with that proposal? So those are questions we have to answer. I do get the budgetary portion. I agree 100%. It's the going from allocating some for budgeting purposes to how do we actually spend that money that's a big leap, really, if we're going to change things, especially to get that done in a timely manner. And I think we would need to try to put something on the agenda for probably, I would suspect the second meeting in October would be the quickest I could see where we could get everybody in the room and have a proposal.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that an ad hoc was just, by the time we form it, get everybody together, we don't have the time to do that, I don't think. But I do like your thought about second meeting in October, see if they can come together and give us, their proposal and see what they have to offer.
And I'm going to toss out an idea just for playing the opposite side of the fence a little bit.
Okay.
From your idea, I'm looking at what is the atmosphere in the room if we ask everybody to come in to a board meeting and present, and I just don't want this really is what's best for everyone. And I don't want us to set up an atmosphere where we're asking each organization to be pitted against the other. I want it to be really healthy and really productive. I want everybody to feel comfortable when they're sharing their ideas. And from that standpoint, I kind of feel like an ad hoc might be the better way to go. We're in more of a relaxed setting where conversation can take place, where people don't feel the pinch of the clock. And they get their one moment in the sun and then there's a win or lose at the end of it. I think it's just, we've got to be looking for the win-win across the board. And so that's what
I don't see, I don't see any animosity amongst the groups. I think they're all going to have their wants and what they need. I just see right now getting an ad hoc together for the short duration that we have, with all the meetings that we have coming up with the library, with the animal shelter, and all the other things that we spoke about today. It may be a little bit tough to get that done in the time frame that we're looking at.
What time frame are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at something prior to your budgeting. Is that what you'd like to know the answer of how much they want?
No. Fairly, I think as long as we have direction consensus that you want us to continue to budget whatever amount, $70,000 is the historical budgeted amount. So as long as we have consensus on that, we can move forward on the budgeting part. This piece that I was asking for a little bit of clarification from Rick from is, what messaging am I going to then relay back to these entities that are going to start asking me, when are we going to get our money? And I don't have any problem telling them that we're waiting. There's going to be a future meeting from the board where they give us direction on how to allocate those funds. And until we have that meeting and we have that discussion and that is all finalized, all I have is a budget allocation. I don't have any authority to send checks out outside of that. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page of what messaging I will present and what additional phone calls that may then in turn lead to for you guys.
So
I get it, and I thought there was a shorter window on that. So if that's the way you want to proceed, I'm fine with that.
And Mr. Chair, I would say, if you were to form an ad hoc, that would be who I would task with coming up with a proposal. Go listen to these entities that are requesting funds, hear what they have to say as an ad hoc, and then the ad hoc could come up with a proposal to present to the board instead of trying to hash all that out in a public meeting. You can do that. It would still be a public meeting, but it'd be a lot less public, and you could have that back and forth with just two board members and come up with a proposal that works for everyone, or at least mostly works for everyone. And then we wouldn't be putting that on Trent because he has enough jobs with this budget.
So I'm hearing two suggestions that can go together. One was what I was saying, to set aside the 70,000, whatever that exact number is historically that we have done, without indication of allocation or authorization to allocate at this time. That we would not at this time authorize any additional LATCF funding, that entities would be asked to work with the funding provided that has not been used for this time, and that the board will reach a final decision on funding and allocation at a later date. And there's then the suggestion to go along with that to establish an ad hoc to meet with the tourism-related entities to come up with a proposal for board consideration.
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, so that's the consensus. Do we have people that would like to volunteer for that ad hoc?
I would volunteer.
Okay. Supervisor Cox, I know you've been involved in it before.
Happy to.
Okay, so Supervisor Gogan and Cox. And since you two are taking on the responsibility, what time frame would you like to set so that we can have that documented as well?
Jill, do you have a time frame one?
I don't think we can have anything back before the 15th of October. Potentially, we want to look at November 5th. Is that too big of a delay for entities to know?
Now that you know it's the 70s.
What was your date, Jill?
November 5th?
So plans for the committee to present to the full board during the November 5th board meeting. Okay. CAO Tuthill or chair, whichever you're choosing to be today. Is that the clarity that you need?
That is very sufficient. Appreciate the direction.
Thank you. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Let's take a lunch. 2.5 hour lunch. Lunch is.
We need to take
Okay. Back in session. Thank you. Still under county matters, we're going to move back to item 1. Board of Supervisors discuss and or take action to appoint a new second primary representative to the Colusa Glen Trinity Community Action Partnership. And Supervisor Frazier, are you going to introduce this?
I guess I can, yeah. And I brought this up in one of my reports out a month or so ago. Because Supervisor Gogan and myself are both primaries on this. And in past meetings, Supervisor Gogan's had a conflict, I believe, with
TMC.
And Trinity County it's an 18-person board. Each county has 6 representatives, and we've only had 3 for the past couple of years that have been showing up. We actually had to change the makeup of the board because we had a vacancy for so long. We amended the bylaws of the CGT CAP board and made it a 9-person board. A minimum of 9 is still an 18-person board, but we reduced the minimum number to 9 so that we wouldn't have to explain to the Secretary of State why we had a vacancy from Trinity County since 2021, I believe, in one of the positions. So anyway, it's something, especially since I'm only going to be on the board until December. We need somebody that can be involved so that there's not a blank spot in that position. So I don't know what everybody's schedule is. The CGT CAP meetings are usually the 4th Wednesday of odd months. And there's 6 a year, 2 in Colusa, 2 in Glen, 1 in Shasta County in Redding, and then 1 in Weaverville, which we just had in July.
Okay.
They have odd, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Do you have a question?
4th Wednesday of odd months?
Yes, like
first, third, fifth.
The first, yeah, 3rd,
Understood.
5th,
Okay,
7th,
got it.
9th.
Other questions for Supervisor Frazier before public comment? Okay, any public comment?
I have no raised hands.
Okay. Well, it would seem that if this is a conflict for Supervisor Gogan, it would be a conflict for Supervisor Carpenter Harris. She's also in TMC.
How often is there a conflict? Every time or?
I'm not sure. You would have to.
Well, I'm second on TMC, and now that we have our new county travel, I don't know. I mean, I'm saying I'm willing to do it. I'll put my name forward. I don't want it to create an equal
Issue.
conflict.
Yeah, and so you're an alternate for TMC? Is
Yes.
that what you're- Okay.
Can I just ask Trent a question? What does TMC pay for our travel? Do they pay for some of our travel allowance? None of it at all?
Does this?
Hmm?
Does
Yes, you can actually get mileage reimbursement from Glenn County.
okay. So I turn that to you and then you get it from them. Whoever it is.
They'll give you a mileage reimbursement form at the meeting that
Okay.
you can.
Yeah.
They send you a check directly. Okay. So we have Supervisor Carpenter Harris has volunteered to assume this responsibility. Supervisor Cox somewhat enthusiastically nods her head. I also thank you for volunteering, and I think that would be great.
And
do we need to inform them officially?
I would,
Send a letter.
yeah, I would suspect we would need to, and I'll reach out informally, but then it would be good if we could get a formal, because it'll probably have. I'm not sure how it works with electeds. I think we get to a point, but I know that people who aren't elected officials have to be approved by Glenn County's board, because we fall under Glenn County's Board of Supervisors as our. So official letter would be good.
Okay. All right, so we have I guess we should have, do we even need a motion for this? Again, the chair can just assign,
I
so.
believe that the chair can be the dictator on this one, Candy. Yeah.
Is that the legal term you use there, county council? Okay, so the chair accepts the volunteer and assigns Supervisor Carpenter Harris to the role, and Susie will send out confirming letter, and Supervisor Frazier, will you share some information with Supervisor Carpenter Harris so she
Yes.
has that to get prepared?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll reach out informally and let people there know that we're going to have a new second from Trinity County, and should reach out to her also with all kinds of fun stuff.
Okay, thank you. We will now move to E3, County Administrative Office, adopt a resolution waiving temporary and mobile food facility permit fees for veterans. Unknown amount of fees. Is that you?
Yes, Chair. So the Board of Supervisors and myself received a formal letter from a business owner, Brian Poe, on the 14th of August, requesting us to look into the fees that he is required to pay the county to operate his business. As you know, we don't have a business license fee. So comparing us to other counties that do have that was, it wasn't as easy to compare like apples to apples, but we were able to do some comparisons through the environmental health arena. And other counties do in fact waive some level of fees that Brian has requested us to waive. And looking at the California, codes, waiving the fees that we have that aren't quote a business license fee, but our fees to operate his business, which include a temporary food facility and a mobile food facility permit fee through environmental health, does appear to be appropriate. And after staff discussions and review of this, which include environmental health, county council, and myself, it is our recommendation that the board adopts the proposed resolution that was put together for this formal request that Brian Poe put forth.
Thank you. Any questions for CAO Tuthill? No? With that, I'll take it to public comment.
Ben?
Thank you. One quick question. Being that, the budgetary fight that we're having, and I think a couple weeks ago, I think it was the GAC that came forward asking for fee reductions. Obviously we all love our veterans, but in this atmosphere, should we be, I think as CEO mentioned previously, we can't leave any money off the table, even if it's small. Perhaps in a future meeting, something is adopted to where the county isn't waiving any fees whatsoever until we get out of this mess, just to set a precedent, good optics, showing the community that, we walk the walk and talk the talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no additional raised hands.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve as presented.
I will second.
Okay. Discussion, yeah.
What's the annual cost approximately? Do we have a?
For these two fees,
Yeah.
would be approximately $918.
Total annually?
Yes.
And this is held specifically to mobile food facilities, correct? Or is it to all?
So this resolution is set
Temporary
up
and
specifically for temporary food facilities and mobile food facilities. That
So
would be,
concessions or like food trucks?
yes, those are temporary food facilities.
Okay.
Or mobile food facilities, depending upon exactly how it's set up and what it's used for. If it's more of a food truck per se, that's more of a mobile food facility.
And a distinction I would draw based on public comment earlier is we've all had these discussions about waiving of quote normal fees. My understanding about this is it's a different animal. This is basically trying to make sure we're in line with state law that already says we should be doing this, and we're just trying to find the right path because we're somewhat unique in not having a business license, so we had to find the right path for that. So it's different than when people come and just ask for waiving our service fees.
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Supervisor Cox.
Aye.
Supervisor Gokin.
Aye.
Chairman Leweiler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4. County Administrative Office, introduce and waive the reading of an ordinance amending code sections 2.60.530 regarding holiday leave and 2.60.770 regarding travel reimbursement up to $31 per day per eligible employee or grand jury member.
Yes.
CO Tuttle.
Chair, this topic was brought before the board last meeting, and in lieu of introduce in the agenda item, it should be, this is waive the second reading of this ordinance. So we've conferred with county council. That is an administrative change we can do. So this is waiving the second reading, and then we would be proposing the ordinance.
And I'll add that this was originally introduced at the August 20th board meeting.
Okay, any questions for CAO Tuthill? I just want to clarify, this is basically just trying to make up for some administrative discrepancies from the past of misaligned numbers and policies.
Correct. These policies are currently outlined in the 5 MOUs with the 5 bargaining units. However, code is contrary to those bargaining unit MOUs, and this eliminates that conflict.
Thank you. Public comment?
I have no raised hands.
Okay. Entertain a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Oh, second.
Any discussion?
Just to clarify, Joe, when you say as presented, you mean with the correction of the language, right? Or waiving the reading of and enacting the ordinance, not introducing and waiving the reading.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
For second as well.
With corrections,
Thank you.
And my only comment, just so that people have an understanding, again, in the sensitivity that we're experiencing with the budget. Having done some travel for the county, I can tell you that generally I am out of pocket money because the per diems just don't cover the costs when you go to the places that, Sacramento, wherever, DC, wherever we go for these meetings. And it is what it is, but at least, we don't want to be causing our staff to have to spend their own money to represent the county. And this doesn't increase anything for, overall. It just is trying to at least bring alignment so we're in the same ballpark. Just wanted to put that on the table. All right, no further discussion. Call the vote.
Supervisor Gokin.
Aye.
Supervisor Cox.
Aye.
Supervisor Carpenter Harris.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Chairman Leweiler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask a question? That's not on the agenda. Is that allowed?
Well, let's try and see what county council allows us to do.
When is an appropriate time to ask for a future agenda item?
During your report out.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Okay. And anytime through the chair, anytime through the chair or the CAO, you can put something on the table and then it can be discussed. Okay, the other item that we have is the one that we added under, I don't know if we're calling now, this is F1.
It'll be subsequent, probably G1 would be my best guess, but
Oh.
I am new to adding subsequents to the software, so.
I'll just put subsequent item. So this was, Chair Cox introduced this, that noting that we had received information indicating that it was a sense of urgency about us responding. And my understanding is that the board previously considered this matter, the board previously approved sending out a letter. This is basically asking for the board to once again send out a letter of support. And this is to try to get approval for that to be done right away. And Chair Cox or Supervisor Cox, I don't know how you, I was keep wanting to give away this role today. Supervisor Cox, my thinking is that if it meets with what you were trying to accomplish putting this on here, if the board could approve that the CAO and chair work together on drafting a letter that is in alignment with what the board previously supported, that we would issue that?
We do, and we've also been provided with the sample that Humboldt County submitted, and so that can provide guidance without having to reinvent the wheel.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this before we open for public comment? Okay, so any public comment?
I have no raised hands.
Okay. With that, we'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Okay, so I'm taking that we have a motion second for the chair and the board, the chair and the CAO to put out a letter that is in line with previous letter approved by the board and informed by the sample letter provided by Humboldt, was it?
Yes.
Humboldt County. Okay.
Thank you for that. Should have been
That's a
specific.
very,
Yeah.
very clear motion.
What was the number for the bill? AB?
AB
11111.
Thank you.
Okay. Doesn't sound like we need more discussion.
Ready? Supervisor Carpenter Harris?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier?
All right.
Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Chairman Lutweiler?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, wait a minute, just. Session report out. Just want to report on our previous closed session. Item F1, Government Code Section 54954.5F. Conference with labor negotiators, counties designated representatives, Layla Cassis, Susie Hawkins, Margaret Long, employee organizations, general unit, and direction was given to staff. And for this closed session, we have F1, Government Code Section 54954.5F, Conference with labor negotiators, counties designated representatives, Layla Cassis, Susie Hawkins, Margaret Long, employee organizations, general unit.
And Chair, we can pull that item at this time. We had it as a placeholder, but we don't have any updates for the board.
So we're done.
We're done.
In that case, we stand adjourned. Thank you.